All right. Welcome back to Crew Call with the Scooters. And it is my very wonderful pleasure to have Dr. Lisa Abel Palmieri with us. And she is the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Western Pennsylvania. And thank you so much, Dr. Palmieri, for being with me today. Courtney sends her best. And we want to dig into what's going on with your organization. It is a nonprofit, 501c3, and it's a national organization. And it started a very long time ago. You guys have been around for a very long time, but I think people would be interested to know, what does the Boys and Girls Clubs of Western PA or just nationally do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. And it's lovely to be here today and get to see you all. I really appreciate the opportunity. Boys and Girls Clubs of Western Pennsylvania, as you mentioned earlier, has been a Pittsburgh staple in the nonprofit community since 1888. So we've been here for over 130 years, starting actually in the city of Pittsburgh in the Lawrenceville neighborhood, where originally it was the Boys Club of Pittsburgh. And, along the way, we were one of the founding clubs of Boys and Girls Clubs of America, which is a national network of over 1,500 clubs across the country.
Hmm.
We're one of the largest, if not the largest, youth service provider across the country, serving 5 million youth a year who need us most after school. And in particular, in the Pittsburgh metro, we have 15 locations. Of those 15 locations, 8 of them are standalone clubhouses, and the rest of them are either school-based or standalone youth workforce development centers. And in the Pittsburgh metro in particular, we serve between 12 and 15,000 kids a year. And then we also have programming in Somerset County as well that some folks might not realize. And we are about the 15th largest club in the United States as a part of the Boys and Girls Club of America network. So they're wonderful in terms of overall support, but we are a separate financial entity and do raise all of our own funds and revenue, bring our own revenue in to provide these programs to, and a variety of service areas to the kids in Western Pennsylvania. And we do everything from before school and after programming to our Artificial Intelligence Pathways Institute to running the Pirates baseball program called RBI to mentoring programs. So we do a little bit of this, we do a little bit of that, and we have physical locations as well as being in schools. And then really the last few months, we've been doing all sorts of new things during the pandemic to make sure our kids and our families' needs are met. Because I think the last important thing to really know about us is we do serve all children and teens, but we do have a focus on the families who need us most. So about 70% of the families that Boys and Girls Clubs serve are single parent households. We're really there as a partner, particularly for single moms, and then families in communities where our kids just might need a little extra help and a little extra resources. So we do serve kids from all neighborhoods. You don't have to qualify for our programs, but we do try to focus the majority of our programs on the kids who need us most.
So, you talk about clubhouses, and I see the gym is behind you. But when we talk about clubhouses, and there's a lot of programming, and I want to dig into that a little bit. It's amazing. I don't hear anybody playing basketball there. Talk to me about, I go to a clubhouse. What am I experiencing as a child? And is there a median age of the kid that comes through?
Yeah, believe it or not, we actually serve kids ages 3 to 18, and then we serve alumni and what you might call out of school youth ages 18 to 24. So we do really span the gamut of serving very young kids in our early childhood and preschool programming up to workforce development and youth workforce development programs to connect our young people, our young alumni, and our teens to really be prepared for emerging careers in the Pittsburgh metro, particularly science, tech, engineering, and math careers, where sometimes in some cases the 4-year degree is not required. And we like to think of this as sort of the high school or the education to employment to college pathway. So they can go back to college later if they choose to. But really what this model provides is an option for any young person to get connected to a high demand career. At the same time, it really allows them to also be with a group of caring staff in these brick and mortar standalone clubhouses and buildings that we own. And in some cases, it's really like our staff is an extended family to these young folks.
Mhm.
When, school districts and schools, a lot of times throughout that 12 years, a
Right.
child's in school, or maybe even beyond if they're in a Head Start or they're in a preschool,
Mhm.
they have multiple teachers and they're in multiple buildings.
Right.
Generally, they're not in the same building for all 12 to 15 years of formal schooling. But with Boys and Girls Clubs, they can be. So we're unique in that a child can literally be part of our extended family for a decade or more. And
Mm.
now, because of the program that we run in the workforce area up to age 24, they can be with us even longer than that. So these
Why and
clubhouses are,
why is that important? Because on your safe spaces
yeah,
big is a big part of what you do. So explain why that's important.
I think there's a lot of definitions of safe, right? And
Mhm.
one of the definitions of safe is literally just kind of maybe the more traditional explanation,
Mhm.
which is you're in a physical building where physically you feel safe. The building is secure.
Mhm.
It's secure from potential violence on the street. It's secure from potential just happenings in the world outside of this brick and mortar building. But the other way that we like to think of safe is really also emotionally and socially safe.
Yeah.
And so it's a place where young people can be themselves. It's a place where young people can really activate and advance truly through high quality programming
Right.
their personal interest. And this is where it's like, listen, if we get the safe place in the brick and mortar building, we get them in the building, that's great. And then we can introduce them to STEM, coding, music, arts. And lately, Boys and Girls Clubs is really going beyond just these brick and mortar buildings. And we offer partnership programming as well in 7 school districts during the daytime. And
Mm.
so we teach middle school and teens about how to reduce risky behaviors, how to be aware of domestic abuse and healthy relationships. And so our services are definitely, a little bit more robust than maybe what meets the eye if you think about sort of the traditional Boys and Girls Club model.
Now, before we started talking, we are recording. We talked about there are 40,000 kids in Allegheny County. 40,000 kids in Allegheny County that are at or below the poverty level, and that was prior to COVID. So, not only is the need so great and so important to be able to get that kind of education and support, but we talk about brick and mortar in these locations. We're in a space right now where we're apart. So how are you going through all that, traversing all of this new all these new challenges?
Thanks for asking that question. It is definitely a new world. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud of our team and our amazing dedicated staff that is truly committed to doing whatever it takes to support our kids and our families.
Mm-hmm.
And so literally within 48 hours back in March of 2020, when the world kind of shut down, immediately within 48 to 72 hours, we started calling our families to make
Mm.
sure they were okay. And so our staff was able to reach out and personally have a conversation during the closures of the pandemic with probably upwards of 50% of our families that attend our after school program.
Mm-hmm.
And generally the families that attend our after school program, as opposed to our specialty programs like our workforce or our STEM or our sports, those families that attend our after school program in particular typically have a little bit more of support need. And so those are the families we targeted in particular. And instead of sending out some email blast, our staff just got on the phones and reached out and said, what is it that we can help you with? What is that you need? And
Mm-hmm.
one thing we kept hearing is that folks needed cleaning supplies. They needed soap. They needed cleaning product. And so we immediately worked with some of our corporate partners. And one of our corporate partners, who's a district manager of Lowe's, he actually drove to West Virginia to allocate alcohol for us to make our own alcohol solution and distribute in cleaning buckets over 700 cleaning kits. In addition to that, we have partnerships with organizations like the Food Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Food Bank and 412 Rescue, as well as Farm to Table, like wonderful partners. And what we really started to do was really to act as complimentary service to what these organizations were already doing. And so it's wonderful, all the amazing food convoys where the cars would line up and get these sort of shelf staple foods.
Right.
One of the things we kept hearing though is we support some families that have limited to no transportation.
Right.
So we did over 400 deliveries to front doors and front doorsteps of food and pantry items, as well as vegetable boxes. And last but not least, we kept hearing all these shelf stable foods are great. It would be really nice to have some hot foods.
Yeah.
So we partnered with a food truck and the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh and the Housing Authority of Allegheny County, as well as a couple of our community partners. And we visited 11 locations and served 3,000 hot meals. Last but not least, you know, we really were thinking about our academic programming and how might we support kind of like the summer slide, and how might we support the learning loss that occurred during the pandemic, particularly because some of the districts we served took months to determine an at-home learning plan. There was no learning happening for a few months for some of our most historically marginalized kids.
Right.
And so we did things like giving laptops out, doing daily live online programming. We were one of the first that started to launch this daily live programming. And we learned so much doing that between March and in June, that in June, we were the first Boys and Girls Club in the country and the first youth service provider in Pennsylvania to launch a partnership with an organization called OutSchool. And we scholarshiped our families to take online, high interest virtual classes that exist between 25 minutes and 55 minutes. And so not only could they take any of the, 140 classes designed by and taught by Boys and Girls Clubs of Western Pennsylvania, they could also get access through this scholarship to over 15,000 classes on the OutSchool platform, which is the platform we use. And so we decided to bucket all of this really into this initiative called Club on the Go. And the demand for Club on the Go, even this summer as the world is starting to reopen a little bit, has been crazy. I mean, like, we are getting so many requests all over Allegheny, Westmoreland, Washington, Somerset counties in Western Pennsylvania to provide sort of Club on the Go enrichment activities for kids. So, they're at home, pools are closed, days where it's raining or it's hot, we're still able to provide this enrichment. And so it's been really amazing. It's been really fun, but it definitely has been really making us think outside of the box of how we normally provide services to the community.
Let me ask this. There's a couple of things. One is that, I'm sure people hear and they go, okay, Boys and Girls, they're teaching. Like, how accredited are they? Well, you have a pretty incredible staff, right? I mean, these are former teachers currently.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the pedigree of the people that work on your team?
For sure. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I just cannot be more proud of the team of people that are literally doing whatever it takes every day, from running an essential personnel camp when the rest of the world was shut down in the red, to navigating the waters of running summer camp programming in person with CDC regulations, to literally offering at least 2 different school districts online summer academic support and beyond. We have a staff that are made up of former early childhood leaders. We have folks who are from higher education. Myself, I was a former school leader, helped to start a school and get a school up and running, as well as work with a few public districts as a consultant on strategic planning. And so we do have a very highly qualified team, not only from the academic support side, but also from the social emotional learning and the sort of those non-academic support needs. We have folks with masters in social work. We have folks who were former school guidance counselors. And so we really do have a highly qualified staff, especially it's obvious in the programs that we have that are licensed through the Department of Human Services, where we can very much show, even through monitoring and program evaluation, that our outcomes of our programs, especially our new programs that we've launched within the last few years, are extremely high quality, and the outcomes are exceeding our expectations, frankly.
Well, you have percentages. There was a 30% of increase in terms of with some of the programming, and I think it was what literacy, I forget what the number
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
You
And
did your research.
I
That's
did.
good.
I
didn't do
tried.
that.
My brain goes every once in a while, but I mean, I think the programming is so important. And I want to ask a couple different questions because, one, you're partnering with uh, Lisa at the food bank, Leah at 412 Rescue. I mean, again, I'm not saying that girls are making things happen, but there's some pretty tremendous women out there that we applaud, and men too. I mean, we love our guys, but I think we're talking about the distressed. The one thing that we were talking about is when schools shut down, not a lot of Wi-Fi access in urban areas for the kids learning. So even though you have people giving you laptops and stuff like that, what about what's the thought and the intention of those communities that don't have access to some of those resources?
Yeah. That's a really loaded question. And I think these are questions that are so systemic.
Yeah.
And so tied to so many things, everything from policy down to tradition and just neighborhoods and resources in those neighborhoods. And I think the school districts are doing the best job they can right now, trying to mobilize as quick as possible. I think for me, this is as a person, maybe as opposed to as a leader, as an educational leader, as opposed to not my CEO hat on right now of Boys and Girls Clubs of Western Pennsylvania, but as an educational leader and an advocate for equity. I think that COVID really exposed the digital divide. And the digital divide was something that we talked about when I was doing my doctoral program 15 years ago. And it was a big crisis 15 years ago that the digital divide was occurring primarily in communities that serve Black and brown children in the Pittsburgh metro. And so, let's take care of this digital divide problem. And I think a lot of organizations and a lot of schools we're finding research over the last 5 to 7 years showing, well, some families still might not have Wi-Fi or a dedicated computer, but there was some sort of research that like 98% of families had a smartphone. Okay. Or that, kids, 90% of kids at least had an iPod or a smartphone or something like that. The challenge that we see now is that when learning is shifting to be completely online, there's unreliable access. There's, maybe one device for a household where there's 4 or 5 kids living at it. And we know that the best style of learning in a virtual environment is live versus self-paced or on your own. Yeah. But sometimes inherently, even that live sort of facilitation of training could be inherently inequitable for our kids if there's not a device in every kid's hand. So we need to do better. We need to do a better job getting the devices in kids' hands. And I know that organizations like ours, we have, Neighborhood Allies to shout them out. They did lead a big initiative with also the Pittsburgh Technology Council to get laptops in the hands of kids. And Boys and Girls Clubs was definitely the benefactor of 40 devices they were able to provide to us to distribute to our kids. But honestly, it wasn't nearly enough. So we raised some money on our own to go out and we spent about an additional $40,000 out of our operating revenue this summer alone, about a month and a half ago, to purchase devices for the kids that we serve. Wow. Because we know there are pockets of kids of that number I told you earlier that are either on or below the poverty line, that as we enter into the school year, how can we best set them up for a little bit more of an equitable learning experience? I mean, they're still not going to meet some of their counterparts in some of the suburban districts and in families with higher socioeconomic status. But can we at least mitigate some of the gap and really rally together as a community to get these devices in kids' hands?
Mia, it's interesting that you say that because you have a scholarship program because you can sponsor a kid, right? I mean, that's part of it. So is that a part? I mean, it's $40 a month currently. But will there be an opportunity, maybe this is a new program, I don't know, just new program alert, new program idea, but so say we wanted to sponsor a kid and we know that they don't have a computer or Wi-Fi or something like that, and so that $40, is there a way that people would be able to say, yep, we can start with Pockets, because it is expensive and it is in some ways you know, it is of course systemic, but it is generational as well. And there's just
Sure.
things that need to be fixed. But how can people kind of get in and help these beautiful children?
So, like many nonprofits out there, we did a relief funding campaign. And
Hmm.
I think the thing about us that I'm very, very proud of is that almost nearly 100% of the funds that we raised for our original COVID shutdown relief effort fundraising went directly to kids.
Mm.
There's so much need though that
Mhm.
that money that was raised was literally gone in the blink of an eye. So
Right.
we distributed over $235,000 of just initiatives that we've done in the community in the last 3 months that have gone directly to kids. And there's still so much more we can do. So we do actually on our website have at bgcwpa.org, we do have a link there that says support our relief efforts. And
Mhm.
like I'm looking at it right now, I loaded it as we were talking. And there are a variety of ways that folks could support on there. They could say, you know what, I want to support a club on the go kit for 2 local families. That's $120. I want to support a grocery store gift card for local
Mm.
families. That's $15. So you could give $15, and then we also redistribute those grocery store gift cards to our families that are in need. And so that's a way to do it. Or you can even go in there where it says other donation amount and put that in there, and then put in the notes what you want it to go to. But the thing I will also say is we are always also interested in old phones
Mm.
and or old device laptops or tablets. And you might think, oh, this iPad is like 4 or 5 years old. Like to you or your family, it might not be something that your family's still using because it's not the latest model or it's not fast. But we also do love the donation of devices, particularly of tablets, iPads, or phones. Even if the phone cannot go on a cell phone carrier, that's okay, because folks can connect it to Wi-Fi. And so at least for some of the kids, that's a lifeline. So like, let's say the high school student is on the only desktop that a family has at their house, but the elementary school student needs to be online too for a Google Hangout that a school is running. At least if they have some sort of device, at minimum during that same time the teen is online, they can get online to a live face-to-face chat. Because one of the worst things that we can do is then penalize a kid for not having a device, and it counts against their attendance.
Right.
And your viewers may or may not know that in Pennsylvania, if there is chronic absenteeism or attendance issues, those families can be referred to their local magistrate, and there's a fine and a penalty assessed. And so we want to make sure that not having a tech device does not get a single mom who's already working hard trying to support her kids, a fine and sent to the magistrate. So if there's those of you listening out there that have old devices you want to donate, we'd love to accept those.
I think it's incredible. I didn't know about the fine. I don't know if anybody knew about the fine, and that's just it's just another hurdle. Let me ask this: you do partnerships with other nonprofits, so just as you were talking about 412 Rescue
Yeah.
and Pittsburgh Food Bank, but you're always looking for opportunity. Am I correct about partnering and
Oh, yeah.
looking? And as you're looking at the new school year coming up, which is so soon, it's amazing that we're going to be in August in less than a week and a half. You know, what does that look like? Who are you looking at, or what kind of initiatives are you thinking about?
School districts are reaching out to us a lot. I think one thing that's unique, when I talk to other CEOs at other boys and girls clubs across the country,
Yeah.
in areas where maybe there's more of the independent school district model, there might be 7 school districts here or 8 school districts here to 1 school district in a place like in Texas or California or some of these other states. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that's unique to Allegheny County, but even just Western PA again in general, is the number of school districts in a small square footage or a small, mileage area,
Right.
whatever the appropriate way to say that is. And so we do have a number of school districts and superintendents actually reaching out to us to
Mhm.
think about how they might be able to utilize our buildings during the day, particularly our brick and mortar buildings that we own. And I think, the other thing too is we do offer some really unique specialty programs in artificial intelligence, in engineering design, in robotics. And we're the sole provider, for example, of some of the middle school robotics programming around what's called the Robotics Academy at Carnegie Mellon, as well as some of our AI programming. And so those sorts of things, we also have other community organizations saying, like, can you bring this programming into our community center? I think the biggest thing we have to think about right now is, what does face-to-face look like? And if kids are in our buildings all day because, their parent has to work and they're too old for daycare, but they
Right.
can't be home alone yet,
Right.
we are pretty much talking about launching our essential personnel camp, but instead of calling it our essential personnel camp, now it's like a school year specialty day camp, right? And so with that school year specialty day camp, then, families can have their kiddos come to our buildings, school districts can potentially leverage and utilize our buildings. But the other thing I would say in terms of partnership is, we get requests, every week from numerous parts of Western Pennsylvania, we have local small town mayors, parent groups that call us, churches that call us that want us to come start a Boys and Girls Club there. And we're always very interested in that. However, one of our models of service is also about the idea of outreach and partner programs, where maybe it's still a church or a parish or a smaller mom and pop community organization that's running a program in their church basement. It's their program, but Boys and Girls might come in a couple of days a week to offer one of our specialty programs.
Okay.
So if you are another nonprofit organization watching this and taking a look at this recording, and you look at our website and you see some sort of programming that you would love for us to run with your kiddos, we are definitely happy to do that, particularly if it's one of our programs that's grant funded, and then there's no charge to the partner to offer that programming. So particularly in the areas of mentoring, juvenile justice, kind of like violence prevention, and healthy lifestyles, which is really a teen-focused program about reducing risky behaviors, healthy relationships, domestic violence, abuse, all those sort of things. We can actually offer those programs for free for community providers to their kiddos.
That's amazing. How many, let me ask this, how many volunteers do you have? And are you looking for volunteers?
Oh my gosh, always. So I want to give a shout out to Rue 21. So the clothing retailer Rue 21 was amazing. They just donated, no joke, 500,000 units of product to us. And so we are very blessed to be able to receive that donation and then not only distribute it to our 12,000 plus membership in outreach, but also to other community partners. Wow. So we, especially in the coming probably 4 or 5 months, we will need volunteers. Maybe you want to get out of your house. You can do this in a socially distanced way. We are putting together basically care packages using the accessories and clothing that Rue 21 gave us. And then we're able to redistribute those not only to our current members, but to those community partners I talked about. So we really need people to help us kind of, to use distribution center terms, to pick and pack product to make sort of these care packages for kids, and then help us sort them sort of by size. So when we do get a request, we can say, hey, we have a request from X partner for 30 kids, and here's the sizes we need. It'll be easier for us to just go in to something that's pre-bagged that says like girls size small, and we need 4 of those, and we can just pull them. So we need folks to help volunteer to do that. We also would love to have some folks help volunteer to do some basic academic tutoring. And then we also do a series of workshops with our teens on our youth workforce development program, which is called CareerWorks. And these are called career captures. And these are awesome little live sessions with our teens where they learn about people's career pathway. So for example, you can be on one of them and tell kids like how they learn, how you got into this line of work and what your career history's been like and how you prepare for a job doing this work. And so that's also just really nice as corporations are thinking about employee engagement opportunities with youth. Or just inspiring that future generation. Kids are not going to be what they can't see. And especially right now, as the world is turning around, we need dedicated volunteers that can share their personal story with the teenagers and some of the middle school kids that we serve to help them understand the potential pathways for their future.
Yeah, Scooters will do whatever you need. We're in. We'll totally do it.
Awesome. That's great. That's great.
No, I think that's amazing. And just to, I mean, you know, there's things that you're hopeful for, you know, that you're looking on the horizon that you're like, oh yeah, but I want to start first. What's breaking your heart right now in terms of like a really heavy need? Is there, you know, and just in terms of the kids or some things that you're hearing, but then I want you to give me the flip side and tell me what you are hopeful for.
So many things. One of the things that always worries me,
Hmm.
there's two that come out in my mind. The first one, I wouldn't be a nonprofit CEO if I didn't say funding. You know, we have to piece together the funding and the revenue that we bring in to serve the kids who need us most from so many sources.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of legwork to write grants for private foundations, get government funding from the county, state, federal levels, through the Department of Education, through schools, through licensure. Like there's so many sort of different funding mechanisms we have that it really does break my heart that there's not one dedicated source of funding. And you know, your viewers might not know this. There is no dedicated source of funding for the out of school world, yet our work is so critical and pivotal, particularly for the kids who need us most, to ensure their safety and security and activating their potential. But there's no one dedicated form of funding. So I'm really hopeful that through advocacy, and you know, I know people like Representative Jake Wheatley have sponsored a bill right now to study the return on investment of after school programming. And so now more than ever, not only us, but other after school providers are critical in ensuring students' safety and success. And so it breaks my heart that we haven't figured this out yet. We've figured out generally, now folks might argue it's flawed, but we have figured out how to fund schools. We have not figured out how to fund after school programs. So it really does put a lot of the work on administration in these nonprofits to constantly be fundraising and figuring out how to do it.
Let me ask this question. I mean, there might be people watching this and go, why? I mean, if they're in school, why do they need an after school program? Why is that important? Why is it important?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, that's that answer with that's a whole hour conversation. But you know, I guess what I would say is the return on investment for after school is huge. Well, again, when we think about the sort of younger kids that have nowhere to go after school, I mean, that's huge in and of itself, is that they have a safe place to go. We feed kids. I didn't mention this earlier, but we feed kids hot meals every day for dinner. So we know that sometimes for some of our kids, this might be the only hot meal, especially in the summer. This might be the only hot meal they have a day. Is to be able to, you know, get access to that hot meal. And I'm thinking about, like, I'm actually like pulling up some other resources that are really interesting. You know, that Boys and Girls Clubs of America has studied sort of the ROI from like a national perspective.
Right.
I do think it's important though for your viewers to know Boys and Girls Clubs of Western Pennsylvania doesn't get subsidy from Boys and Girls Club of America. I've had people say to me like, oh, well, Boys and Girls Club of America gives you money. No, they don't. Think about Boys and Girls Club of America as like an organization that kind of like licenses us or charters us and allows us to use that brand. They make sure we're meeting certain quality indicators, but they don't give us funding.
Right.
So I think, you know, we help kids catch up with their academics. So we provide math and reading support. You mentioned earlier our program that's funded by the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania, one of our major supporters. They help fund our literacy programs. And so last year, for example, our literacy programs that we ran with our kids showed an average 29% growth in their academic abilities in math. And another 30% in our reading and English language arts. So we provide academic support. We also expose kids to, I mentioned earlier, things like robotics and arts and things that their schools don't do. Unfortunately, many of our schools, particularly our schools where our kids are under-resourced, and you know, they really are at promise kids that can be whatever they want with the right support and the right resources. And so sometimes when schools are really stuck because of their own policy challenges and their own challenges that they need to work through, teaching to the test and or focusing on core academics where they're not exposing kids to the arts and to STEM and STEAM, science, tech, engineering, arts, and math programming that's more hands-on and project-based,
Right.
we allow kids to explore those passions that they can't explore during the school day. But the thing you'll hear a lot of our kids, like I totally enjoy going out and doing like homework help. So we help all the kids that are in our programs get their homework done every night. And it's when you talk to the kids and you go out, and I do this, probably a couple times a month, where at minimum I go to our different clubhouses and help the kids do their homework. And it's so amazing to hear from them that some of the things they just love the most are the emotional safety
Mm-hmm.
and the place that feels like their home. We have so many older alumni that are in their late 20s. Like I talked to a guy the other day, and he's a tech consultant now. You know, he said something to the effect of, everything I know about leadership I learned at Boys and Girls Clubs. I talked to another person the other day. They said to me something like, improving, something to the effect of, literally almost like, you saved my life. Like the club saved my life, because, in my neighborhood, I could have been like some of the other kids in my neighborhood and been involved in hustling or selling drugs. And this kept me off the street. This kept me away from that. And then in other communities where we serve a different, maybe more rural or suburban, like our Somerset Club, it's that idea of, I learned some key skills. I learned
Right.
skills that then I could apply back in the morning at the farm,
Right.
or I learned skills that I can apply to help my mom. And so the value in after school is really, honestly, just to summarize it, it's providing enrichment and opportunities that kids don't get anywhere else.
I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, education changes everything. And these kids are smart and beautiful humans, and they just need the opportunity to explore that and and have it and
That's what
have
it is.
access
It's
to it.
access. It's
Yep.
access. And
Yeah.
so I think you really helped hit the nail on the head there. It's like, what we can provide, us and the other after school providers out there, we can provide access and opportunity that kids otherwise would not have.
Yep. Yep. Well, that changes everything. It
It
changes
does. It can
everything.
change not only a child, but it can literally change their family and ultimately their whole neighborhood. So, for example, if you're a kid who grew up in a single mom family situation, perhaps your family lives in subsidized housing, and/or your family income qualifies you for free and reduced lunch, and then you go through sort of like middle school and then teen programming at Boys and Girls Club, and now you have the opportunity that otherwise you wouldn't have had through your school, to get connected to an apprenticeship or to get connected to a technician job where you can make $70,000. That is not just changing that kid's life, but that's literally changing their entire family.
Yeah, it
And
is.
so the economic impact and the potential economic development impact that Boys and Girls Clubs can have in the communities that we serve is really, really the potential there. With the right funding, the potential there is, it could be unlimited to really, truly change the life of kids and their families.
Legacy changers.
For sure, for sure, for sure.
That's amazing. Okay, so then where's the hope? What's the hope on the other end of it? I always say hope is not a strategy, but tell me, if it's backed well, what's the hope on the other side?
That's a hard one. I mean, I'm taking a moment to process this. I would just say my hope is we can serve more kids
Hmm.
in communities that need us most, particularly right now.
Yeah.
And we can find new friends to help either create opportunities for advocacy for dedicated policy change and funding from a public level, or who can help us through, whether it be corporations, things like tax credits, things like getting laptops to our kids. My hope is that we can just continue to support our kids and show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that there is, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and hopefully help to try to break some of the perceptions that some of our kids have that the world has given up on them.
Yeah.
And that is what some of our kids feel like.
Yeah.
And that makes me almost want to cry repeating that, but it is the truth.
Mhm.
The stories that you hear, I was talking to a girl, a teen, a couple weeks ago, and she's lost her fourth friend to gun violence. why. And that's a whole other conversation on why, but we have to do better for our kids. It has to be now.
Yeah.
COVID, I hope, has woke people up that things out there aren't hunky-dory. We have a lot of work to do as a community.
No, we do.
And so my hope is that we can truly be bipartisan. We can truly put differences aside and come together for the future generation, because it's that important. Now is the time to do that.
Yeah. Well, I just thank you so much. I see you do have a little Alexandra Graysick around your neck with a little Sabika, and I know that some of those parties support the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and I know that you're always looking for other companies to support and come alongside, especially as we walk into this new year. And I think the biggest thing is these kids need help, and they need people to stand in the gap for them and say, we're not, because there's a lot of shame involved. There's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff happening.
We have to be really delicate, right? Because what kid wants to be labeled as a poor kid or an at-risk kid, right, or a kid with some label? So we're very conscientious with our kids to make sure that we describe them in ways that are dignified and ways where it's framed as a positive, like at promise kids that are untapped. We try to not use words like poor, at risk, underserved, because what kid wants to go to programming or attend programming? But in reality, a lot of our corporations do need to know demographically, our kiddos are kiddos that are at risk. And so I hate those labels, but at the end of the day, companies like, for example, recently we had a new partnership with MedExpress. Mm-hmm. Honestly, without hesitation, MedExpress donated close to $20,000 for us to do our food truck event. So even if you're a company listening to this and you're like, you know what, I like that idea of, providing a backpack filled with school supplies for every kid. Like, I want to be a sponsor for that. If you're a company and you're listening to this and there's something you want to do that really aligns to your company's mission, just like it did for MedExpress, then talk to us about it. We need all the supporters we can get. And there really is like no shortage of what kids need. However, my major call to action is around the tech devices, either helping us fund purchasing them or companies who would consider donating them. We got to take care of this problem as number one, especially if the school year starts online again. We can't let our kids have another 6 months where they're falling through the cracks.
Yeah, no, we agree. We totally agree. Well, Dr. Palmieri, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for all your work and your team. You have a really cool team that are, I'm sure, dedicated and working around the clock, because even though it's COVID, everybody's working very, very hard. So we appreciate you, and we hope that some people hear this and they get excited about what they can do, because these kids aren't labeled. They're just beautiful little kids, and they're loved. And I think if they know that, then that's what the corporations need to kind of rally around.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity. And if anybody wants to reach me, the best way to reach me is just by shooting me an email, and it's lpalmieri@bgcwpa.org. You can also find me on our website under Meet the Team.
And we'll put that in the post on YouTube and on Instagram too.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.